Right. And I'm glad you do bring up COVID as being something that's going to affect all of these issues and how we treat those issues. And so in your opinion, have you seen how COVID affects the allocation of resources, or how do you predict COVID will change how we allocate those resources?
Well, I think that so far what we've seen has not been, terribly hopeful about the way resources have been allocated. And as I'm sure, again, you're both aware, the disproportionality of people of color who've been affected by this disease is huge, so we can get into all the reasons why that exists, right? Mostly essential workers or lack of, access to health care. The reasons go on and on. From the education side, though, since, that's primarily what you guys are interested in, most of the kids who are learning remotely now are Black and brown youth. They're not the white kids are going to class for the most part. Why are they staying home? They're staying home because the families are terrified because of the disease prevalence that they could bring that disease home. Some of them live in intergenerational households. They're afraid of exposing grandparents, elderly parents, right? So you have this great irony of the kids who are most in need are learning remotely without access to digital devices, without access to internet often. So if they were already behind, they're falling further behind. And I think that's fairly well documented that kids learn better in school. They belong in school. And many of our lowest income and minority youth are the ones learning remotely. And the prognosis for how far behind some of them are going to fall is grim, in terms of your question about will they allocate more resources, there's talk of that. There's talk of paying attention to these communities. There's talk of trying to accelerate vaccination in those communities. I don't want to be too cynical, but I have to see it to believe it. It hasn't happened terribly readily. And it's really been to the detriment of a lot of young people who rely on school, not just for education, but for socialization, for the relationships that they have with school personnel, for meals, right? A lot of kids get their meals in school. So all around, COVID has affected the most affected already, in every realm. And Ria knows I talked a lot about this in class in the beginning of the semester, because on every front, if you want to talk about social injustice, this has been the most illuminating example of, an unjust society, I have to say.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And, we see so many articles talking about how this has really lifted the veil, I guess, on a lot of the problems in the United States. I think something that a lot of college students feel, especially myself, is that while we are aware of these issues within education, we often feel unsure in how to address them, or we feel discouraged when we hear, that there's so much lack of funding that needs to be allocated towards these students. So in light of that, what's your advice to current students who are interested in giving back and being a part of positive change, but might not know how to go about doing so?
So, I always say, and I think I say this in all my classes, and I say it as a social worker, we have to work on several levels, right? You're talking about the macro level that's much harder for us to address, right? Government, funding, etc. But on the micro level, I've always believed you can still make a really, really big difference, and I'm very encouraged and heartened when I see students sign up for my service learning classes, because I know that they want to make a difference, especially Stern students. I had a whole following this semester, Ria, like 6 of them. It was great. But all kidding aside, they come from all schools, and it's a wonderful thing. And I would say, if you're interested in giving back and doing service, do it, and try not to get discouraged by the noise, of knowing that maybe it's not enough, but it's more than doing nothing. And there are places to look for those opportunities. I mean, everything from as local as like NYU's Office of Service, which, is always in touch with me about looking for volunteers, etc., to going on websites, large websites that offer volunteer opportunities. But another, I think, really good thing to do for students is think about what you're interested in, because not every student wants to give back in the same way. So if you're interested in the issue of hunger, find a website for a food pantry or a hunger organization. Look for their volunteer opportunities. I think that's almost a better way sometimes, is to find the thing you really are passionate about, go on their website and look into their volunteer opportunities. And sometimes those organizations even have really great training that goes with being a volunteer, rather than just like throwing you in and you do the work. They'll provide the training and the support, and that's really great. So I think, it's hard. I personally volunteer now at Breakthrough New York City, which is I think I got to Breakthrough through Rhea, actually. I didn't know about Breakthrough, but I'm a college coach, and, it's only one young person that I'm going to, follow hopefully throughout her college career. But I feel like it's so important. I wish I could do 100 of them, but none of us have the capacity. We have to continue to work on the micro level and keep an eye towards the macro, and also I think in terms of empowering people, if you're working with youth and you have a parent group or a family support group, you empower those people to advocate for themselves as well. I think that's very important, that people have, a lot more resilience and a lot more resources than they realize, but if somebody comes along and says, together we're gonna, do this, it can make a very big difference. So that's what I would recommend.
That's some very good advice. I think it's important that we keep in mind that, a little bit of progress, whether it be just a couple hours every week, is certainly better than no progress at all and feeling, bad about all these things. There's definitely, I think, something that everyone in this community can do to help further educational equity. But we wanted to thank you so much, Professor Morton, for taking the time out of your day to speak with us and share your knowledge with the empowered community.
Thank you for having me. I hope I answered, any questions you had. And if anything else comes up after and you want to, email me or have me fill anything in, by all means, please contact me.
It was a delight speaking with you. But guys, if you're interested in more of these service learning classes, definitely sign up in the upcoming semesters. They're offered within the social work department, and anyone from any major or year can register. So definitely check it out. Thank you so much for listening to our episode today.